Hey Robin,
Think Kyle.
nice to have you here.
How's it going? Can you
Pretty
hear me
good.
okay?
Yes, we can hear you. We're just a couple more
Perfect.
minutes. We're waiting for Kyle.
I think I
Dustin.
found them. I think Kylos get paid. Could that be? I'm pretty sure that's. I just
Um,
invited him to speak.
okay.
Yes.
Hey Kyle.
So we're getting paid? Is that what you're saying? I wasn't aware.
Hey, perfect. Welcome everyone. I think pretty much everybody is here and is I think set up. So thank you everybody for joining. Today we're going to have a conversation around sort of what are we doing as an ecosystem and as project individual to onboard more users sort of onto Polkadot. I think the whole we know that we've been sort of really good in onboarding the developer community. It's something that since I think the inception of Polkadot was one of the strong points and continues to do so. And that's been an effort that's sort of been led by Parity and continues to do so. One of the interesting recent things that we've seen is from having activities which are from hackathons to getting all of the ecosystem together for events such as Sub-Zero and even more recently more academic oriented with the Polkadot Academy, which is doing sort of a terrific job. But again, what we're here to discuss today is what are we doing in order to onboard a more broader community, right? Sort of which is from the outside, looking at Polkadot as this sort of really big and interesting ecosystem, which is still sort of striving or struggling also at the same time to bring in new users. So today we have with us Robin, who's from the business development team from Parity, who's going to be joining us. We have Dustin, who is from the Astar marketing team, who's going to be joining us. And also we have Agile, who is from, I think Agile will be able to join us. Probably will be able to get him up here, who is from the Talisman team, and obviously, wallets being a big part of onboarding a more general ecosystem. We're here to discuss. I'm going to be from our side, talking, let's say, on the gaming side, or trying sort of to talk about sort of the application layer, which is, I think, quite an important part. And last but not least, we have here Kyle Chase. Kyle Chase, who's running Master Ventures, has been in this space for quite a long time, supporting both as an investor, as a builder, as an advocate for the general ecosystem. He is, with Master Ventures, also an investor in Ajuna Network, and he's here sort of to guide this discussion and sort of moderate this discussion around what sort of the Polkadot ecosystem can do or is doing to onboard your users. So, Kyle, thank you for being here with us and taking the time to moderate this discussion, and I will sort of hand it over to you. I don't know if you have any issues with your microphone. We can't hear you, but maybe let us know if you're having issues and we can.
Me now?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, there's something wrong with my Rodecaster, my mic and normal audio stuff. So I just use the one on my laptop. But if you guys can hear me, then all good.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Cool. So yeah, thanks everybody for coming. And yeah, as was gracefully introduced, have been in space a long time, and definitely looking forward to what you guys are building at Ayuna. And yeah, as you said, we did invest, and what I'm really excited for is to hopefully see some really big use cases coming out of the Polkadot ecosystem, because it is the infrastructure layer that I find one of the most advanced as far as just the future of blockchain, the network of blockchains, everything that you really want to think about as far as interoperability and the kind of flexibility it allows us to have when it comes to things like passing a lot of the difficult Web3 kind of feeling stuff, removing that from the end user and allowing us from the development side to kind of to deal with those issues. So and to deal with that kind of economic economic requirements between maybe the developers and the network itself. So that's what I love about it, and then of course interoperability. And so far though, we haven't really seen too many use cases that have been really adopted by a lot, and I think a lot of things are going to help, like Talisman for sure, making a better wallet experience, because Polkadot.js has been was horrible. But yeah, we're also very familiar with the dot ecosystem, and we are doing our part as well, as we do run a Polkadot fund as well, a $20 million VC fund in the Polkadot ecosystem, and from where Polkadot has historically been very focused on attracting developers and speaking to developers, I've been trying to emphasize a lot with some of the team members at Parity, on how we can communicate the benefits of the dot ecosystem and the parachains building on them, to how it resonates more with your everyday kind of retail users, and specifically entrepreneurs who are considering building something in Web3 but really haven't chosen a platform where to build yet. So that's my 2 cents on kind of the ecosystem and where I'd like to see us going. Should we start off with how about just each of the guests, if you guys wouldn't mind doing a brief introduction? I know that it was slightly touched on already, but yeah, if we could just get a bit introduction of everyone who's here today.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes,
Yep.
we can.
Oh, miracle. Thank goodness for VPNs. I'll go first then. I'm Agile from Talisman.
Nice. And Agile, for those who aren't familiar, maybe you could tell us just a little bit about I think it's very significant, what you guys are doing, and to really help with everything that we're building. Maybe you can just tell a little bit more to anyone who's not familiar what Talisman is, and why it's significant for the Polkadot ecosystem.
Yeah, sure. So Talisman is a browser extension wallet for the Polkadot ecosystem. And it's really simple in concept, but in practice it's very complicated, because there's many blockchains in the Polkadot ecosystem, and they're all different, they're all heterogeneous and specializing in their own unique different things. And Talisman is a wallet that allows you to leverage applications on any of them and see all of your balances in one place across all your accounts, across all chains. And we also support a lot of EVM chains in the Ethereum ecosystem, because the EVM is prevalent in Polkadot. We support it, and as a result, you can actually use Talisman as your daily driver instead of MetaMask. But if you want to learn more, you can go to talisman.xyz.
Cool. Thanks, Agile. Yeah, Dustin? Or anybody, actually, who wants to go next.
I'm happy to jump in. This is Robin from Parity. Really good to be here. Thanks very much for the invitation. So I'm in the Parity growth or BD team, and our main focus, I suppose we have two strings to our bow to simplify things. We take a nets and a spears approach. So our net is for all the crypto native builders that want to build on Polkadot. I'll talk to that a little bit later, but that's mainly driven by our marketing arm. So there's inbound projects that are exploring Polkadot, and it's our job to be that first point of contact, to, I suppose, quote unquote, sell them on Polkadot if they need selling on it. A lot of them are very knowledgeable already, but just want to ask specific questions or find their path into the ecosystem. And then we have our spears approach, so nets and spears is our outbound approach, and that is the targeted BD outreach that we do. And that could be teams from other ecosystems, it could be established teams that have big user communities, or it could be Web2, Web3 crossovers, enterprise businesses that are looking to explore Web3. And those tend to be longer engagements, as you can imagine, multi-month, perhaps even multi-year. And those are our two focuses. I can jump into a little bit more about the verticals we're looking at, and a bit more color on both of those. But that is us in the Parity growth team.
Robin, maybe just for fun, if you could give those listening maybe just a little bit of insight on kind of objectives and goals for the Polkadot ecosystem, for 2023.
Yeah, very happy to. I mean, as you touched upon already, we know we've got a fantastic developer community, sort of thriving developer community, and I think now this year we're growing our BD arm, we're growing our marketing arm. So we know the tech is good, we know the tech is excellent, but as we all know, the best tech doesn't always win out. You do have to, until you gain a certain traction, it's a bit of a snowball effect until you cross the Rubicon. You can't just rely on there being good tech and that being enough to attract people. So you actually have to be active, you have to be proactive, you have to go out and you have to find these teams. So on the one hand, we're working very closely with our marketing arm, and the marketing arm is going to have specific campaigns focusing on 3 verticals, so gaming and NFTs, decentralized social, DeSo, and ESG. So we think these are important areas for our ecosystem. They align with our values, and as I'm sure will be discussed at length on this call, there's very good reason to believe that gaming and NFTs are going to be play a huge part in the adoption of crypto in general, and particularly on Polkadot. And then, of course, we still keep our eye on DeFi, and infrastructure is incredibly important. I'm working with Agile at the moment on a big infrastructure deal. And as far as possible, we try to co-BD with parachains as well. So Nick and I will be on a call later this week with a gaming infrastructure producer. So yeah, that's a little flavor of where we're pushing. But yeah, we recognize that we have trodden carefully to this point. We've definitely not chased, I think, some of the pumps that we've seen other chains chase. And that doesn't mean we've missed some opportunities, but that's because we've been trying to build something that is truly long-lasting and unstoppable. It's also to do with our engagement with the SEC, so that we can morph from a security into a software. And these things just mean that we've been a little bit slower to market. So we're both early and late, I would say. We are early in our journey. We're maybe a little bit later than some other chains, but we believe that we've built the best foundation, and therefore that we're just about to come into our ascendance.
Yeah, I would what I have gathered and kind of usually communicate the kind of I mean, I do know that there's been a lot of caution taken toward the way that things are communicated from the Polkadot ecosystem, from things like Parity or Polkadot, is just the fact that there's a very careful when it comes to regulatory concerns, and yeah, congratulations on the morph. I know that there's no official announcement from SEC because they couldn't set precedents, but as far as I understand, that's it's been done and dusted, which has been a huge step in the right direction. I think one of the things that probably just I would imagine probably happened, and this is just my own speculation, but when you're the CTO of Ethereum and you literally built a lot of that code, Ethereum didn't have to do any marketing, like Bitcoin didn't have to do any marketing. They were the only games in town, and so when you go from that kind of success, where an experiment turned into a wildly successful infrastructure for the world, and then you go immediately from that and realize that this experiment was actually worked really well, and in fact, it works so well that this experiment that you created is no longer suitable for the kind of scale in which you imagine the demand will need in the future, and you realize maybe you could have done some things differently, address some of the things that were the pain points, and then built. And then Gap goes out to build Polkadot. Because of that pedigree of where he came from, and because it was still the next kind of Ethereum as far as a public eye, you really didn't need to market at first. That's why Polkadot got its huge initial kind of notoriety and success that did when it launched. But then, I think that there was so much focus on the development side of things, building that foundation, that there was a bit of just forgetting to talk to everybody in the space and really what the narrative and the benefits were. The reason that I understood the benefits so well as a non-developer for Polkadot was because I listened to some of Gav's earlier speeches where he talks about building a solution for entrepreneurs who want to create a really good business logic and could benefit from having their own blockchain that didn't necessarily want to build a blockchain from scratch and save all that time and effort, and having the nice infrastructure to do that from. And that's what got me interested in it, and exactly what we're using it for. But yeah, it's good. It's really great to hear. And that was one of the questions I had today, was going to ask in general. It's like, what's going on with the community from Polkadot? And I think that even though every single layer one, like Ajuna, for example, is its own blockchain, there's still that affiliation that ties back to the mothership, and needs that support. So it's really good to hear, and I think a lot of people listening will be stoked on the efforts to relay the message and narrative and benefits better to the community and things like that. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you mind if I just chime in quickly again? I'm sure you probably want to speak to someone else. Don't want to hog the mic. But yeah, I mean, I think just to that end, and of course, hopefully, the teams will speak to this as well, building on Polkadot. But with things like events, and with the question of community, which is a very big question, this is actually one of the big draws. This is one of the big buttons that we push when we're talking with people about moving to our ecosystem, whether they be from even a competitor like Cosmos, or another kind of sharded chain, whether it's subnets or zones or whatever it may be. We really push that button about, with regards to community, and focus on the fact that there really is a big effort at events to support our teams, and vice versa. Sponsorship, hackathons, in different geographies, whether people want to set up their Polkadot events, it could be a meetup, it could be a coffee morning, whatever it is, we do what we can to activate as many of these as possible. And therefore, to present ourselves as being, a team that are all moving in the same direction. So we might be sharded heterogeneous chains, but we also have XCM, and we all talk to each other, and we talk to each other in real life, and not just calls and RPC and all the rest of it, and that's really important. And we are, as I said, we're turning on our marketing machine. We're putting more focus on our events. You're going to see a more joined up front from Polkadot, and that includes BD, it includes co-BD, and it includes being joined up and supportive at these events, so that our messaging is clearer, so that if you talk to someone from Moonbeam, or you talk to someone from Talisman, or you talk to someone from Parity BD, you're getting the same coherent message about why Polkadot is a great place to build. So I'm extremely excited to see all that happen, and I think that will really activate in the next 6 to 12 months. So yeah, it's going to be a big year.
That's good. I actually would like to get into some of the specific use cases of XCM, XCMP. Well, maybe we'll ask Ajuna to kind of tell us how they're planning to use that. But maybe, Rob, if you don't mind, before passing the mic on, maybe you could just tell people what is XCM and XCMP, and how does that whole theory or logic differ from like a normal bridge that we're all familiar with. Right?
Okay, well, I will do my best, but the caveat is that I'm not a technical person, so I think by all means, jump in when you want. But XCM is a messaging format, and XCMP is the way that those messages are passed between protocols. So you can think about it as cars being XCM, which is the format of the message, and XCMP being the highways. And these are channels between chains where you can pass arbitrary data. And it's really at the very heart of what the Polkadot ecosystem stands for. And this was in the 2016 white paper for Polkadot. It's about having true trustless native interoperability, which I think probably only Cosmos really has something similar in IBC. Avalanche are always talking about having it. Many of our competitor ecosystems don't have this. And it's exactly that. It creates communication between chains. It's trustless. It's arbitrary data, so it means that you can call, data or functionality from other chains and essentially benefit from everything else that's in the ecosystem without having to implement it natively on your own chain. So maybe you want to use a DEX on someone else's chain, or you want to use an Oracle for a price feed, or XYZ use case, rather than having to integrate that specific module or palette into your chain. You can essentially call it using XCM, XCMP, and benefit from that functionality. So it joins up the whole ecosystem, and that's why it's so important. I think I'll stop there. I probably can't get too much more technical than that, but happy to.
I would like the audience who's here to maybe I don't know, like, if you, is most people listening right now, are you guys technical or not? Because I have a feeling that maybe we're not a super technical. I mean, I'm not anyway, so that description worked quite well for me. I guess the
Mind
question.
if I jump in and create like a bit of a unifying narrative about some of the
Yes,
things
please.
that we've just heard.
Yes.
So I guess like it was mentioned that, you know, Gavin Wood, one of the founders of Polkadot, was the guy who implemented Ethereum, and sort of Polkadot is the sort of the next step in that sort of Web3 vision. And you know, one reason why, you know, I might not want to build my business in Ethereum is because the properties of the chain, you know, it's a libertarian paradise. It's completely permissionless. It's completely open, and I can't really change those properties. But there are other businesses, other use cases that we might want to implement that have different needs. And so this is where this idea of having many blockchains, heterogeneous blockchains, meaning different, so different blockchains connecting together, comes from. And I think it's really important to have some like humility and say we don't know what the best ideas are. You know, the great thing about Polkadot is we can have something that is a libertarian paradise like Ethereum. We can have we could have a government create a central bank digital currency on a network with different properties, and all of those blockchains, all those entities and businesses can decide how they want to share value and how they want to do business with each other, how they want to exchange value, and that's what XCM facilitates. XCM is the means, or XCM and XCMP are the means by which all of these new entities can coordinate and share value, and we can see, you know, the best ideas win. Yeah, I think that's how I think about Polkadot. I think it's like, I don't know what the best ideas are, so I come to this place where everyone can express their own vision for how things should work, and those ideas can compete, and we can have, a unit can build their ultimate vision for a blockchain, and that can decide what relationship it wants to have to everyone else's vision. I hope that's helpful.
That is helpful. One question that I have, even for myself, I'm not clear on. Is the protocol XCMP, is it going to be able to also do like cross consensus or cross chain assets as well? Like now we use bridges typically for assets to get from one ecosystem to the next. Let's say Ethereum to Solana or vice versa. Is that going to be facilitated the XCMP as well?
Yeah, so through XCMP, there's a whole bunch of different ways of transferring assets between chains. One of the most, I guess the common standard that has emerged is something called a reserve balance transfer. There's no need to kind of go into detail, but given that blockchains allow, you know, cryptographic truth allows for scarcity, and it allows for value on the internet. Like the most obvious use cases for XCMP are around transfer of value across chains. But I think that the vision of XCMP is that it can be arbitrary, and so you can have, things that we may not yet conceive of. You know, like I make a post on decentralized social media, and this gets my credit score in like my proof of human to a certain point where I can borrow more from my loan. Like there's all of these systems could talk to each other in ways that, you know, we can't really conceive of yet. And it's the goal of it is to be as flexible as possible. And so all of the businesses that are being built as parachains can decide how they want to talk to each other. And yeah, sending tokens is, I guess, the most obvious use case and is already super prevalent in the Polkadot ecosystem. But maybe the Ajuna team can jump in and talk about their vision for how XCM can be leveraged in Ajuna.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think for us at the end of the day, Ajuna is here to try and to sort of pick up what Robin said before, we're here to try and see if we can ignite sort of that spark, right? We can sort of, in the Polkadot ecosystem, working on the application or sort of working in the gaming space has sort of that advantage that it's our job at the end of the day to try to take all of this technology, package it into something which at the end of the day as a user experience is something digestible, and then the application sort of will do its job on its own. That's the way that we can create an engaging community. And even with an example as the Awesome Ajuna Avatars, that was exactly the intention. How can we take a technology which is already here, in a way provided by us? We have Polkadot, which gives us the opportunity to run, or sort of Kusama, actually more specifically here, to be able to run our own chain, to be able to create a game and put the logic on it, to be able to use the work that's been done by other teams, to be able to partner up, not in a complicated way, but in an instant way with somebody like Talisman and the other teams who are working here, in order to provide at the end of the day a unified experience to the end user. So for us, even when we talk about different technologies or ways that we can interact with other chains, it goes back to the use case. So things that we are exploring and could be interesting is from stable coins, right, to DEXs. These are the type of things that when we're talking about game economies could be, depending on the design of the game, quite critical. But at the end of the day, us, again, what we loved about this technology, we actually got to enjoy all of these resources with the launch of the game. I can give you a simple example of how great it was to be able to launch a game on Kusama. Even during the game, when we realized that there were a couple of issues going on, whether that was somebody abusing the system or something that we had to update, the fact that Kusama allows for these, whether you want to call them runtime upgrades, whether it is that we can on our own make those decisions in order to prevent from something, which another change you couldn't, already is a massive advantage, especially when you have to do with an end user. So yeah, I think it's all about abstracting the technology. At least I think that's why we are here, right? And create Web3 experiences for end users that can enter the Polkadot ecosystem.
Okay, I'll get back to you. I want to talk a little bit more about the game, but before we do that, Dustin, you've been nice and quiet, but you are from Astar, and I think that's would be lovely to hear from you, a bit of a background about yourself, and maybe quickly too, for those who aren't familiar with Astar, maybe you can enlighten.
Sure. Yeah, my name is Dustin Lee. I'm the marketing social lead in the marketing team in Awesome Network. We're a multi-virtual machine. That's our main project. We're trying to bring EVM and WASM into the future, essentially into the Polkadot ecosystem, so becoming the future of smart contracts. But we're also utilizing our build to earn program, which allows for projects to onboard without having to put up any capital, so they can go ahead and start building a community around their project, and by incentivizing themselves and the community, utilizing our DApp staking, so they can bootstrap their projects. And so our initiative right now is using our XVM, which is our cross-chain EVM to WASM, and then also utilizing XCM to speak to parachains as well, utilizing our protocols that we have with shared security with our Polkadot ecosystem, of course. And then our recent initiative, if you guys haven't seen, is that we've been signing with Japanese projects such as Toyota, sponsored by, we can't say in that sense, but and then also with the Sony incubation program that we just announced. That's going to be a huge initiative. With both of these initiatives, we're going to have at least 100 plus projects building on our ecosystem, so that's kind of the focal point going forward. And then just kind of my personal thought about the ecosystem, what resonated with me. I've been in the space since 2018 technically with the project Darwinia, Iterating Tech, but navigating myself through the space with NFTs has been my kind of bigger incentivized virtual property and digital assets in the sense of owning, having self-sovereignty. That's just kind of who I am, that's just who I am in general. And then the Polkadot ecosystem itself, Substrate, modular blockchain. Once we get to the point, what we're trying to build is to completely abstract that, Web3 interface, more of a Web2 interface, but Web3 decentralization, giving everyone sovereignty and all that aspects. What drives me in this space, of course, this is why I have reached out to Ajuna early on, was because they are, building .mog. Battle Mogs is a project I've been really interested in. I've been, standing there, cheerleading for everyone, waiting for, the right time for the project to be out, and it's finally out. I'm excited to be here, and I appreciate you guys inviting me.
Cool, thanks, Dustin. Yeah, so I guess, and so is there any other any other kind of partnership or anything between Ajuna and Astar, or nothing kind of official at the moment, just supporting each other?
So I think, as Dustin mentioned, we've been supporting each other quite a long. But next month, also the team is from Astar is going to be here in Switzerland. So there's a couple of things that already from our side we know that we're working on to talk with Astar. As I said, they're in a market that has been one of the richest traditions in gaming, Japan. One of the richest tradition in sort of also culturally around sort of the space that we are in. So yeah, there's a few things that probably will be able to announce later on, but not yet.
Okay, maybe you could tell us a bit more about the game that was just launched.
Yep, sure. I mean, for us, this was a culmination of quite some time. As most of you that supported us doing our crowd loan for our parachain on Kusama, that's where sort of that initial hint of the Awesome Ajuna Avatars was put in. And at some point during end of the quarter of last year, we understood the importance of trying to create sort of an engaged community around the projects that we were doing, right? The NFT market had started becoming quite stale in the approach of it was attracting communities. It was sort of all of this bait and switch and try to create this scarcity, and the whole experience was the same thing. I had to rush, get in early, and if I was lucky, I had to pay for an NFT, and then at some point in the future, that would create some value for it. So there was not a lot of engagement. So the idea of the Awesome Ajuna Avatars for us came back trying to think of really experiences that had to do with collectibles when we were kids. Panini stickers would probably be a very good example of what we're thinking of. That whole idea of, opening a pack, it's the World Cup. My favorite players are there. I opening up, I have my album. I try to sort of stick them there. And that creates, sort of that initial first experience, which then turns with you going at school with your friends and trading cards. So it was engagement that we were going for. Cedric put a lot of time. The first iteration of the game we put out was in November, which we actually tested in Sub-Zero with the community. I think we've created a really, really good balance. So we launched the game on the 10th of February. Our intention for it was to run for about a month, maybe a bit more, or its natural, let's say, course. And it had a potential of an abrupt ending once we hit the 888 legendary avatars. We hit those within, I think, 5 or 6 days, and the game came to an abrupt end. We had over 1,000 people in those 5 days join and play the game. Over 200,000 mints of the Awesome Ajuna Avatars. And just to give an indication, we had over 200 players out of the 1,000, so over 20% of them reaching a legendary Awesome Ajuna Avatar, which to translate in terms of engagement, that would mean that somebody would have to spend anywhere between, I would say, 4 to 6 hours at best, but on average probably around 8 hours in 5 days to achieve that, playing a game. So we're very proud of what we did. You can still sort of play the game. I can give maybe sort of just a brief overview since I have Also, Kyle, you here. So the way that the game works, Season 1 is, as Dustin mentioned, around battle mogs or inspired by battle mogs. Here's your dashboard where you can see both your stats and you can see what's going on in the community. The way that it works is that you can go to the market, you can choose to have free mints, you can choose to open a pack either with free mints or by you. Currently my inventory is full, so I'll be able to show you the getting a pack later. Here's my inventory, and the goal for me is to take one of these common Awesome Ajuna Avatars and forge them all the way to legendary. So in the beginning, I'll just choose somebody that I think sort of his, so let's choose him. Hapos, you choose a character. They have different forces, as you can see from his chart here, 6 different forces for the Awesome Ajuna Avatars, from Dream to Kinetic to Solar to Thermal and so on. There's soul points, which you can imagine being something like experience points, and then there's the different tiers. So there's a common, there's a rare, and there's a legendary. Each of them have 10 levels of progress. So if I choose this character, there's also quite a few more information that you can view here. If you want to put this character on the market, you can do at any point. Choose a price, click on the green button, and he will be on the market. But let's go ahead and choose this character, Hapos or Hapos, and let's go ahead and forge him. Here, then I choose from my inventory up to 4 slots, which I can put in one of the Awesome Ajuna Avatars, and you can see that visually we're giving some indication here with, let's say, a glow on these characters. So I'll go ahead and add them. Each time I add a character, I will see on the right hand here of my screen how my forge estimation is changing. I can put up to 4, which would represent the best probability for me to get a good forge. Each time I add up to 4, I can get a maximum of increase in terms of rarity to 4. I'll go ahead and forge. I have to sign my transaction. And once I sign my transaction, then I have to wait for the forge to take place. Now, each time we put some visual cues to indicate whether this is a good forge or a bad forge, and it depends on the combination of that you choose to do so. So once that forge takes place, then you will be able to see both the before and the after the forge of how this worked. So now briefly, once this is done, I will show you, and then I'll give you just a brief insight of how we created sort of the strategy here for the Awesome Ajuna Avatars. So as you can see here, this is the before, this is the after, which you can see both visually, but also in terms of the soul points and as well as the increase. Now, the increase for the potential maximum of 4 points increased only by 2. And the reason for that is that Cedric has very cleverly created a sort of a strategy or a hidden logic behind the game, which has to do with these 12 constellations. These 12 constellations match in a very specific way with those 6 forces. And each time with that solar clock which is turning again sort of in real time, represents one of these constellations. You have to be very careful of which are the forces that you can choose. So currently the market, as I said, the game you cannot buy, but we have a massively right now active market where people can go in and they can find different Awesome Ajuna Avatars to find and get theirs up to legendary. So that's in a nutshell what sort of Awesome Ajuna Avatars is and how Season 1 played out for us. It will continue for a couple of weeks, and we're hard at work in preparing Season 2 and preparing also how we're going to take these legendary Awesome Ajuna Avatars and the players into their next adventures on Ajuna.
When's Season 2 going to be?
So the way that we're planning right now, we expect Season 2 to drop in May, maybe a bit earlier, but sort of most likely we see it dropping in May. And Season 2 is going to be focused on the pets, which is going to be quite interesting, and I'll be able to maybe show a couple of snapshots of it a bit later on.
Cool. That's really awesome.
Yeah, it is very cool. I've got a question, about blockchain in games. We saw Ubisoft come out with this announcement, like this is maybe a year ago or so, that they were going to be working on nothing but NFT games, and just massive rejection from their community, their audience, and they had to basically withdraw that and retreat for a little while. And I know that in the background they're still working on it aggressively, but it wasn't the right place or the right time, I guess, or maybe just the right narrative. So, what are you doing as Ajuna? You know, and this goes a question for anyone who else wants to chime in as well. You know, who has an opinion about what is it going to take? You know, because I think most of us who understand NFTs and crypto, we get the benefits of doing it, and we also understand that like there's not a huge difference between buying an asset in a game like with whatever in-game currency you're using versus like a cryptocurrency that actually lets you own that asset and take it with you and have be owned by you. But that is not really well understood by the masses, and they think that we're forcing some type of new like a lot of new barriers to entry and all trying to make money off of them and blah blah blah. So it seems like it's going to be a difficult task. But I'm curious your strategy, and if you have an idea generally, how do we approach this?
Yeah, I mean that's a tough one, and as you can see, every different chains or different projects have a lot of different approaches here. I think from our side, we can see it a bit like that similar time when mobile phones started coming out. So the first, let's say, mobile phone, one of the first applications that took off was Snake, right? And it can't get any more basic than that. The technology was very limited. You had a dot matrix screen and you could just go left and right. But it wasn't the technology that was limiting. The problem was that it was a very small audience. Very few people had sort of that mobile phone. And again, when smartphones came along, the promise was that you're going to get console-level gaming on your smartphone. Well, it didn't happen in the beginning. You had sort of really basic things. I think similarly here, we are focused on creating Web3 experiences, right? Because most of the logic that we're trying to implement, or most of the thoughts, are already there for gamers. They've dealt with digital currencies, they've dealt with digital assets, and they've learned to value them, even to the point that they would take them out to black markets. But what we forgot about in the blockchain space right here is that we forgot that the reason why they would go to the lengths of taking them out of the market is because they really cared. So we need to get back to creating those experiences, and that's what we're trying to do, sort of as a first step with the Awesome Ajuna Avatars, to create value in these assets because people care with them, they care for them, whether that's because they spend X amount of hours playing for them or they spend X amount of hours, talking about them with their friends. And once we've created that sort of connection, then it's easier to implement or push them towards things like staking or them understanding this as a financial asset. Where up to now, it seems that we're going the other way around. It starts with an NFT sale where there's a financial promise to it and then a utility or something for it down the line. So we're trying to sort of see how we can turn the narrative around. And just briefly on the Ubisoft's part, because Ubisoft has been in the space in 2017, right, with starting the Blockchain Gaming Alliance, creating incubators for blockchain games since early on. So they're experimenting, and it's great that a lot of them are continuing to do so. But until they can bring that technology into a game without having to alert, I think, the user with terms, they're probably going to remain on the experimental side of things.
Yeah, that's a pretty good answer. I mean, a different approach, definitely having people, really have to earn these NFTs versus just being able to buy your way to the top is I think that was probably one of the biggest concerns I had heard, was that pay to win was something that definitely didn't want to be implemented into the ecosystem. So that's a good answer. From Ajuna specifically, what as infrastructure, who is your target audience? Like, who are you trying to build technology for?
Yeah. So I'm not going to go into the vision right now, sort of what we're building towards, because just to briefly mention that sort of technological leap that we're waiting for the industry to take, even at the level of Polkadot with relay chains, which take us to a future that we can become a blockchain of blockchains for games, which means that in a future studio could get a whole blockchain as the same way as we have a parachain for their game or for their gaming ecosystem is what we're building towards. But today, and for the next few years, we're taking the approach of trying to find those teams of indie developers, or even sort of even bigger projects, if possible, who want to dive into these native Web3 experiences and onboard those projects, starting with something like the Awesome Ajuna Avatars. The Awesome Ajuna Avatars is essentially a community building product where any NFT project could simply launch a season on of the Awesome Ajuna Avatars, whether they're building their game on Ajuna Network or not. So it's a way that they can build a community, and for us it's a way that we can engage with projects quite early on, which, based on sort of what the requirements are for the game, we can see how then we can onboard them as an infrastructure down the line. So more focused towards Web3 native games at this point, teams that are building in towards those experiences.
Okay, so yeah, so mostly game developers, and then and just to expand on a little bit the technology and why you guys chose Polkadot, and just elaborate on that a little bit. Can you tell us a bit about kind of the steps you're taking to make sure that the end users of the indie games, or let's say whatever games are being built on Ajuna,
Yep.
What is that? How maybe is it different for end users using games built on Ajuna versus like Ethereum or BNB chain or BSC chain or whatever?
Absolutely. I mean, our choices came from our own struggles trying to build out .mog, or even before that called World of Mogwise. So initially, one of the first steps that Cedric had taken actually is taken Dash and forked Dash to use it as an infrastructure. And that on its own was a massive undertaking which didn't work. So he understood sort of fairly early on the problems of running your own infrastructure can bring to sort of the game development side. So the reason why we chose Polkadot was the fact that as a layer 0, it gives us the opportunity to, at the same time, have the trust and security of a huge infrastructure, but also the sovereignty and agility to create our own use case for gaming is what made it attractive to us. A second part which was really attractive to us is that we used, and we still will continue sort of to use for the time being, work on palettes. Because sort of if you want to be EVM and gaming, there's other solutions sort of out there. We want to focus on palettes because we think they give a wider option for creativity and options for at least game developers. Now, when it goes to how we specifically sort of as an ecosystem, what we can do better is that by the time that as a user you're onboarded on a game on a Ajuna network, whether these are called wallets or tokens, all of these things will be sort of abstracted in the background. All that you should care upon as sort of a game developer is to deliver the game to them without these bottlenecks, let's say, in the middle. So that's what we try to do here with Awesome Ajuna Avatars, where we just know exactly who our audience sort of is. We know that it's for the Polkadot ecosystem users. We know they're comfortable with a wallet. We're giving them use cases that they can do something with these tokens.
Yeah, I think what so another restraint or constriction from a lot of gamers being able to really, and games being able to really adopt a lot of the ideas behind things like NFTs and in-game currencies are that we're often, a lot of the players are often running on limited, very tiny budgets, and if you need, even if you earn an NFT in something, just to send it to your wallet or something, if you're on Ethereum, you're paying anywhere between $4 maybe, or so to maybe $50 in gas, and that whole process is just, I think is no gamer is gonna ever put up with anything like that, right? And so from the actual user experience, what are you guys doing to address this?
Yep, that's a great point, and actually the Awesome Ajuna Avatars was a good use case for that. Essentially, we set up season 1 to be a free-to-play. We were doing it with free mints. All we had to do is just make sure that we are onboarding, right, sort of in the correct way. And with free mints, we could incentivize people to start playing the game. And as in any free-to-play game, if the user is happy with the experience that he's getting, once the time of those sort of free mints or the free to play part of the game ends, he's going to do two things. He's either going to find a way to pay to continue to play, or figure out what the mechanics of the game are or the incentives for the game are for him to continue playing, let's say, getting his free mints or free logins on a daily basis. So I think that's really important. For the part of what we do with the fees, one of the things that we're really happy, and we'll be sharing more information on that later down the line, is that end of last year we also went into a partnership and obtained an IP from Erdstal in order to be able to create off-chain workers, essentially a gasless marketplace, which is based on works with trusted execution environments. Or in a simpler way that we can put that is what the offering for Immutable is in terms of gasless real-time. We will be able to achieve the same thing, but instead of using zero proof knowledge, using trusted execution environments, in order to make sure that these NFTs can move, whether that's within the Ajuna network or within the Polkadot ecosystem, with the same ease and transparency also outside, starting first with Ethereum and following up with then Polygon.
And does that mean that anytime, well, and I know that each game might integrate differently, and there might be different aspects of the game where you have transactions that happen or need to process on chain. So does that mean that every time that a user does something that happens on chain, that they're going to have to pay gas for the transaction?
So the way that we had designed Ajuna Network and Bajun Network was it for it to be able to work in a single gas fee token. How each team designs, or sort of the amount of these sort of gas fees and who bears the cost, will be at the end of the day decided by each team that puts out the game. But for sure, what they can do, which you can't do in other ecosystems, because you can say even on Immutable or you can say on Polygon 0 fees, but at the end of the day, there's Ethereum behind there, right? Sort of there's always a gas fee token. Now, in Ajuna, because you can use a single token for both the game economy and as a gas fee, it's again up to the design of the game itself of how you want to distribute that. Meaning that if you have success and these gas fee tokens are being collected, they're collected back in your treasury, and you can select then sort of to incentivize them back to your users, let's say, or not.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's one of the big selling points that I've thought about from Polkadot perspective, and that architecture infrastructure. Yeah, I think that did anyone here that's not like I guess Talisman's the only one that's not said. Then you got Astar's the also a layer 1. I was just gonna see if anyone had considered, or maybe you can just tell us what other ecosystems you considered before choosing Polkadot, and then ultimately why you did. And anyone feel free to answer this.
I can speak to this with respect to Talisman. You guys would like?
Please.
Well, I mean, like I was sort of saying before, that Gav was around, a key contributor to Ethereum. He wrote the big contributor to the yellow paper, and as far as I know, and implemented the first version. And I think for the years since 2016, when Ethereum launched, a lot of blockchain projects have been about how do we make Ethereum scale. But again, I think Polkadot is something more like, how do we make a more actualized version of the original mission, which was allowing people to build systems that express their values and provide guarantees, built into them. And for us, we saw every major ecosystem is converging on the same architecture roughly. We have Ethereum with its rollups, we have Polkadot with its parachains. I don't really know much about there's another one with subnets, I can't remember what it's called. And there's Cosmos as well. And so like more blockchains many blockchains is the solution to the problem of we need more block space. And yeah, I think Polkadot is the people behind Polkadot are really the originators of a lot of these ideas that are being implemented elsewhere to different degrees of success. And so, yeah, that's a vision that we wanted to see actualize, and that's why we built in Polkadot, because I think it is the most actualized kind of vision. Like I said, I don't know what the best ideas are, or depending on the problem to be solved, you need a different system. You might need a system that's more open or more closed or more private or more transparent. And you can't have an everything system to solve all problems really, really well. If you generalize, that means you fail to specialize. And so, yeah, I think the intellectual honesty of the Polkadot ecosystem and around their vision is really great, and they're originating a lot of the ideas. We thought we'd bring our talents here.
Yeah, thanks. I think also it was a tremendous need for a solution like Talisman. Without Talisman, I don't know that we would expect anybody to ever use the Polkadot ecosystem. The .js wallet, like I said before, is absolutely unusable for 99% of the people out there. I mean, even I struggle to use it today. I try not to use it if I don't have to. But that's necessary infrastructure for an ecosystem. And I'd like to know if so also the EVM aspect. Like for example, I know that Astar is doing some EVM stuff. I know Moonbeam is. And a lot of other kind of parachains are also implementing the EVM palette or making EVM compatibility. Does Talisman allow you to use the EVM aspects on the EVM on Polkadot as well?
Yeah, definitely. So if you can use EVM in Polkadot and outside of a Polkadot in what you might call the EVM ecosystem, where instead of there being many different blockchains, there's many homogeneous chains. They're all implementing the EVM. And so if you download Talisman, you can create a Polkadot account or an Ethereum account. Your Polkadot account can be used across the entire Polkadot paraverse, as we call it, the universe of parachains that exists. And your Ethereum account can be used on Ethereum, Arbitrum, Moonbeam, Astar. And so we support both. And we will, anything that comes to Polkadot and becomes a prevalent standard for how people want to run their chains and build their apps, we will continue to support. So just in the same way that, there's MetaMask does some very specific things around ERC20 transfers and ERC721s, these like social conventions that the ecosystem has converged on for how to exchange value. Anything that parachains are implementing that is starting to accrue liquidity and users and grow, we will definitely make sure that we support, because we want to be an all-in-one solution to help the bootstrapping and the growth of this new ecosystem where people can express the ideas that they value.
Yeah, that's significant. You made me think of another question I have here. It took me a while to understand kind of the framework that tokens existed in, or standards in the Polkadot ecosystem. That everyone knows that if you're building something in Ethereum, you need to do smart contracts or token contracts. Like you're using Solidity as a language to code, and so it's quite a universal standard within the Ethereum ecosystem, which makes it also very powerful to build those developer toolkits and ecosystem toolkits to solve the same language. But in Polkadot and Substrate, you have there's not any real clarity on the same way that you have it in Ethereum, where it's Solidity in Ethereum, right? I mean, in Polkadot, you can really write on natively smart contracts in any language it compiles to WASM, which was hard for me to wrap my mind around at first, as well. And then you can also use Solidity if you're doing EVM, a virtual machine with VM. And then I imagine that probably someone, one of the things we started working on too was Move, compiling Move to WASM as well, so that if that becomes a really popular narrative, that we can facilitate that too. But yeah, so the question is, and really anyone can answer this, ink or non-Solidity based smart contracts. How is there some sort of standard now that's been developed that makes it easier as a wallet solution to kind of integrate these different tokens one by one, the same way that any ERC20 or BEP20 are very obvious on how that framework looks like? And is that being a struggle for you guys at all?
Yeah, I guess to add some color to things, like there is, we want to separate in our minds like palettes and contracts. And so I can write contracts in Solidity, I can write contracts in various languages that will compile to WASM, and I can also implement a system as a palette or which will be part of a blockchain runtime. And these are all different things. And there is not, like I said, kind of the goal of Polkadot, but I would not analogize Polkadot to Ethereum so strongly. I would analogize maybe Substrate to contracts in some way. But the goal of Polkadot is that people can build the systems that make sense to them, not so much that we can arrive at some standard that everybody accepts, that everybody is leveraging. And I think like fragmentation and diversity is kind of built into the DNA of Polkadot, and very much in the same way that, two blockchains are going to be different and they're going to have different standards for how they might do things. In much the same way that if I go to the United States, the culture and the food and the public transport system and the laws for how I run my business are different to if I go to China, and various things are different there. And there will be sort of Schelling points for how things are done. Obviously, most countries, like I assume nearly all countries, issue passports, and they all kind of look the same. They're all about the same size. They've got a picture of your face. There are some things that make sense to be the same, and for there to be convergence around. And I would say XCM and XCMP are, is the system that allows for communication between blockchains, and the kinds of messages that we're seeing sent between chains with XCMP, I would say are probably, you'd expect to see some social consensus and convergence around them, in the same way that there's convergence around social conventions for how to do things in Ethereum. Like there's ERC20 is a standard, and I can implement it in a way, like when I write my contract, I implement ERC20. It's not like the chain does ERC20. And so yeah, and I guess I'll leave it there.
Cool. There was, I just asked I'm conscious of the time too. I have to get off here in a second, but if anyone else wants to take over, feel free. But there was a question asked from the audience that also made me think of another question too. Their question was, when do you expect to be cross-chain between Bajun and Ajuna? That's the first one that you guys can answer from the Ajuna team. But the follow-on question to that, and I don't know if anyone from Parity or Dot can even answer this question legally, but the second part is, you have Kusama and Polkadot, and Kusama is supposed to be the expect chaos, break things, move, build, where things are implemented first. It's essentially like a test net with economic incentive or economic value to kind of make it more than just a test net. But it's confusing to a lot of people, myself included, on why. Well, not necessarily why they would run at the same time. Let's say Ajuna's system runs on Bajun and Ajuna. That makes sense from a testing perspective. I think where the struggle is for a lot of people is the economic logic behind this. And does it make sense for people to really kind of speculate or play around with the Kusama network projects, especially if the project exists on both chains, both networks, Kusama and Polkadot. So I think that a little bit of understanding around the economic aspect of Kusama and Polkadot, and kind of why Kusama exists in a test as essentially a real test net, the benefit of having that economic substance in there too. If anyone could shed some light on this, it'd be really interesting.
Yeah, maybe I'll take at least the Ajuna part, and maybe sort of explain what our intention was. That again, for us, it was always about trying to make sure that we're thinking for our industry and our community, and Kusama as a testnet, as a place initially where we can experiment exactly like we're doing now with the Awesome Ajuna Avatars, made a lot of sense. So if you see it in the life cycle, if you see sort of the evolution of our networks, how it's going to go from Kusama and then the introduction of Ajuna, it takes the same, let's say, life cycle of a game. So we're at the stage right now that we're onboarding a community, right? Getting them, let's say, excited about what it is that we're building, about products that we can get out and experiences. And the way that this community is being built is through the Bajun Network and incentivized through the Bajun token. And once we get to the point that we will launch sort of Ajuna Network, all of this work and all of this value that's been done up to now gets captured from Baju and then sort of goes on to Ajuna. So that was the way that we see how these two networks can play together. The advantage of having a test net, as sort of you mentioned, Kusama, was exactly what we saw happening in real time with Ajuna Network, that we could on the spot go on, fix things, and so on and so forth, which I think is pretty important.
Yeah, I can also just add a little bit more color about how in general, like, the idea of the Canary network kind of makes sense. The steelman for Canary networks is that there's just a very big like leap between going from testnet to going to mainnet. You have, with a testnet, you have maybe a bunch of nodes that you and your business run, and you might try and do some simulations, you might try and pipe a bunch of transactions through it, but until you have multiple actors doing different stuff, a whole bunch of people trying to find ways to exploit the system and find arbitrage opportunities, capture value, it's just not reflective of reality. And we could have the mindset that will like Polkadot could work like Ethereum, where you just deploy contracts and good luck, have fun. It's a libertarian paradise where there's danger but opportunity. But I think the goal, at least the reason for Kusama's existence, was to make sure that this very revolutionary and ambitious vision of having parachains and having shared security, you could test it with real world value, where that creates all of these emergent properties that you don't get in a test net, but also it can break, like it can fail, and you don't risk the home base, right? So it is very hard, like going from testnet to mainnet. And so the advice I would have for people is to listen really carefully to the individual projects about how they represent the purpose of their Kusama chain versus their Polkadot chain. Some people have done like community fair launches for their Kusama chain. Some people have done completely different systems, like Hydra DX, their team is a great example. They have Basilisk, which is for LBPs, and on Kusama, and they have Hydra Dex, which is like implementing the Omni pool on Polkadot. And so you really need to, it is permissionless, and so people, some people want Kusama to be legitimate and successful, but its original goal is to have something where things can break, and we can make progress, move fast and break things, so to speak. And so I would listen to the individual teams about how they represent the purpose of their Kusama chain versus their Polkadot chain, because therein lies the expectations you should have, and you should always be careful, because things might break, and this is real value which can evaporate or it could grow, and you don't really know.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. Yeah, that gives a bit of color. I am interested to see how things play out with those who choose to migrate, from, let's say, Kusama to Polkadot and not run in parallel. I can see use cases and pros and cons for both. Obviously, if you plan on doing a lot of iteration, you know, in perpetuity for the foreseeable future, that probably makes a lot of sense, just to make sure that you're not going in Polkadot and breaking things. I mean, that's also critical if we want enterprise adoption, or for people with a large audiences to come over and start building on repair chains. By the time it's on Polkadot, it should be battle tested and really not have any failures. That's the real intention of this, and for that,
Yeah, exactly.
it's quite unique and special. I do think, though, that well, I think what you said is the most important thing, is how to communicate properly the value proposition to your audience, so they understand the difference in product announcements, what's shipping, and kind of how value is accrued on each network, and if it's different. That is really important. I don't know if a lot of people understand, or if it's clear yet, the difference. So that's my 2 cents. Does anyone else have any questions at the audience, or anyone else on the panel want to say anything?
Actually, I was a little curious, Agile, if I can ask. So what is your guys' thoughts on like PSPs and Polkadot standard proposals and integration for Talisman Wallet?
That's probably a better question for my co-founder Nipsey. But I think for us, the goal of the Talisman wallet as it stands today is to be sufficiently abstract in general that we can support the whole Polkadot ecosystem. My view is that in the long term, it has been articulated on this call, like, people shouldn't need a browser extension to interact with a video game, right? Like, they should be able to play a video game, have an immersive experience, and still have the benefit of this sort of real world value and really owning their assets. And maybe they need a wallet when they go to the secondary market, but the sort of the future vision is all parachains are going to build all kinds of things that don't necessarily adhere to the paradigm of like click to do a transaction, pop up, etc. And so we will we'll implement anything in Talisman that the community kind of supports, which is getting traction, and we see this becoming an important social convention for the ecosystem. But our goal is to stay general. We can't do absolutely everything. We can't be an everything wallet. We have to choose how to approach things so that we can be as broad as possible. And then separately to that, we're going to be open sourcing at the end of the quarter. And so we're going to make it, do our best to support parachains as they build out the things that they want to build. But I'm happy to comment on certain PSPs, but none of them are in front of mind for me in my brain.
For sure, yeah, I do and have been appreciative of your guys' approach, both from Birdo as well. Having that kind of abstracted experience, which is very important for our space in general. So, but yeah, of course, I'm excited about PSP 34s mostly, but just in the general space, NFTs and having more of a accessibility to that aspect.
What is PSP 34?
That's the NFT non-fungibles.
Is it like an XC721 or something like that? That's something I'd really like to see in the ecosystem.
XC7. Oh, well, I mean, yes. Well, PSP would be more, ink related.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I think like ink is a really, really promising technology. Like there are so many languages that can compile to WASM, and so I think the goal of ink is to bring a lot of developers. There's so many developers out there that are building apps right now that aren't blockchain developers, and we want to bring them all into the ecosystem. But I think in terms of I think we're going to see Ink winding up and growing in its momentum over the next couple of years, and I think, but it will take some years for the slow decline of Solidity and the EVM as the common paradigm, because there's always so much value there. But yeah. I'm really interested. Jonathan or Nipsey is the best person to talk to about Ink. He's all over the tech side.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, there's a lot to the success of Ethereum that we can all utilize in the liquidity aspect, and also the communities that are being built, and the support and tooling, learning from their predecessors in this sense. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to Ink 4.0, which is coming out pretty soon, and on top of that 4.1 with XCM. So we're going to really see some huge implementation with Ink in our space.
Yep. Yeah, totally. I think contracts that can, that are more Solidity contracts don't necessarily weren't meant for Polkadot and this sharded architecture and asynchronicity, and so I'm excited for what can be done with Ink. Hey guys, I got to drop.
Yeah, I think also
I
Kyle
wanted to say,
needs to go, but I wanted to thank sort of really everyone, Kyle, for taking the time to sort of moderate this discussion. I think it's been definitely super interesting for us, and I hope that everybody in the audience at least sees one thing in common, that we're all working towards tools, applications. We're all working towards finding ways to onboard a wider community, while at the same time maintaining sort of the vision or what initially attracted us to that ecosystem. So yeah, again, thanks sort of everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks very much, guys.
Awesome. Thanks for coming, guys. And if you want to get started with Awesome Ajuna Avatars, make sure you download Talisman at talisman.xyz.
Hey, there we go. That's true. And yeah, for the rest of the sort of community, until we sort of drop off here for the call, you can still go and play Awesome Ajuna Avatars. There are free mints floating around, which you will find on our Discord server most of the times, and challenges. Cedric has been cooking up some stuff. I won't say exactly what it is for our OG community, which should be kickstarting in a couple of days. We've seen a lot the question of when is season 2 going to launch. We've answered it a couple of times, yet we still get a few times in our chat that, hey, is it launching in 9 days? So quite specific information about it. So no, it's not launching in 9 days. Our expectation is that we can deliver it in May. Again, what we want to make sure is that we can provide sort of an equally engaging sort of experience as we did with season 1, and build upon it, but also take all of your feedback, take a few really nice ideas that Cedric and Theo and Patrick are cooking up for you, and prepare fun season 2 towards May. And yeah, last point again, in regards to the Awesome Ajuna Avatar legendaries and their adventures. Different type of work that needs to be completed there, but really exciting, and we will be sharing more information, and that would also be with a similar, I would say, time frame. Dustin and Agile, thanks sort of for sticking around and for your awesome sort of support these past days. So yeah, and for the community, we'll be sending out information as we're going to be having these AMAs sort of on a weekly basis, sometimes with guests, sometimes without. Sometimes talking about products, sometimes other stuff that we find interesting in our space, but always trying sort of to update you with what it is that we're up to. So yeah, have a great afternoon, everyone. Have a great start to your Monday, to your week, excuse me. And until the next one, have a good one. Bye, everyone.
Bye, friends.
Reminder, everybody, to join us for a Polkadot community call Wednesday, 4 p.m. CET.
Hey,
with the Ajuna and Astar.
I like that. We'll see you there.
Yes,
right?
check events. We
Don't
already
forget
have
that. Put it on your clock. Put it on your calendar.
Put it on the clock.
4 p.m. CET. We'll see you Wednesday.
Hey, everyone. Have a great one.
Have a good one. Bye bye.
Bye.